ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and journalists present here today, greetings. When I look out and see such a wonderful group of people working across the education sector and beyond, it makes me think what a similar group might look like 30 or 40 years from now. Perhaps the children that will be entering primary school this September will be here in our place. And we don't know what type of world they will live in. We don't know if it'll be harder or easier for them to find work, to own a house, to raise a family, and to meet basic needs. And our responsibility as parents, as teachers, and as leaders is not just to make a child happy in the moment, is not just to prepare a child for a single exam, but rather to prepare a child for the entire life cycle, to make them successful, happy, and productive 35 and 45-year-olds. The world never stops changing, and in this sense, education sector reform is not a transition from one static position to another, but rather a constant process of pedagogy to keep up with the pace of change and to fulfill the human rights imperative of harnessing the latest from science, knowledge, and innovation to ensure the best possible outcomes for our children. The type of job that those children entering primary school today in September will be doing when they enter the labour market maybe has not yet been invented. We don't know what that job will look like. All we can do for our children is teach them 21st century skills, and as the Prime Minister explained, skills that are underpinned by a passion for lifelong learning. 21st century skills: agility, adaptability, communication, ability to collaborate, and characteristics of optimism, curiosity, and intrinsic motivation for what we do. To this end, and in response to the piece of study, a group of educationalists from diverse sectors of the ministry have come together and developed a quality control proposal to improve and strengthen and monitor the performance of the learning environment, of teacher performance, and of student outcomes. And this is designed in a way to ensure that whether a child is from Rajaya, Ragami, or Rizan, whether a child is from a rich or a poor background, urban or rural, girl or boy, that child will have the same quality of learning and will be measured against the same standards. The second part of this conference is looking at the global consensus that for brain development to be optimized, children need to start to learn as young as possible, as early as possible. And even the hardest, toughest free market economist would now agree that there is no greater investment that a society can make for its long-term competitiveness than investment in preschool education. With the Ministry of Education, we have looked at the preschool situation, and we acknowledge that we have disparity, that a child born in the north is 10 times less likely to go to preschool than a child born in the south. And there are similar indicators if you look at poor and rich children. So we have worked, the ministry has worked with us and with experts from Yale University and elsewhere to develop a set of options for discussion at this conference and beyond about how we expand preschool education. And the most ambitious but feasible option, which places an emphasis not on extensive budgetary commitment, but rather on reorganization of the system, suggests that by 2020 we could increase preschool coverage from today's percentage of 40% up to 95% by 2020 of 3 to 6-year-olds in preschool. We think there is no better investment that government could make than this. The third aspect of the conference is talking about how do we harness innovation. Technology, on the one hand, to advance outcomes and learning for children in mathematics and to look at the way we use technology to organize schools. Secondly, in terms of innovation, we're looking at this amazing new body of evidence that tells us across the world that by focusing on developing character, which can be taught in schools, characteristics such as motivation, optimism, curiosity, integrity, and grit, that we can we can improve cognitive performance in exams, but we can also improve non-cognitive skills, which lead to better academic performance, but also better success in life in general. A top-class education system focuses not on teaching children and students to memorize facts. It emphasizes mastery of ideas, of arguments, and of reasoning. But building an education system that is strong and successful can only happen as a reflection of the broader society. And we must also call on our parliamentarians, on our civil society, on the media, and particularly on the Montenegrin intelligentsia to uplift national narratives and debates to make sure that we present the best evidence-based thinking and globally informed debate across society so we can have a truly intellectual society that influences the education system. But any education reform, and what we will learn today from different parts of the world, must be firmly rooted in Montenegrin values and in the Montenegrin spirit. Fellowship, solidarity, and social cohesion. I want to just take a moment to tell you a story about the power of teaching. In the 1920s, in French Algiers, a teacher was very concerned that one of his most talented and hardworking young students was to be withdrawn from school to help his single, disabled, impoverished mother to generate income from the house. The teacher successfully persuaded the mother to allow the boy to continue with school. 30 years later, that boy, Albert Camus, walked on to accept the Nobel Prize for Literature. He dedicated that prize to his teacher. The teacher's name was Louis Germain. Throughout this conference, you will hear amazing stories of inspirational teachers from the young people that are participating, that you see all around, that are volunteering during the conference, and how teachers instilled in them a passion for learning that will stay with them throughout their entire life. If you dig deeper in society, you will also find people who have had adverse childhood experiences, bullying, poverty, violence, and abuse, sometimes committed by those closest to them. It is the teacher that has helped to instill in those children the character strengths and perseverance to overcome that adversity and build new lives. But whether helping children to become passionate about learning or protecting children, these teachers are the outliers. They are still in the minority. And we need to build an education system that promotes these values and characteristics throughout, and one that is where those teachers and those values are promoted, rewarded, and celebrated by head teachers and the wider community. I'd like to thank the Prime Minister for his strong support for children's rights and leadership on children's rights in Montenegro. I'd like to thank Minister Stjepovic for his partnership in putting together this conference. I'd also like to thank his team. I need to refer to my notes here, I'm sorry. I'd like to thank his team of Natasha Gazivoda, Tamara Milic, Vesna Vucorovic, as well as the heads of the central education institutions and their teams, Mr. Pavle Goranovic, Mr. Dusko Rajkovic, Mr. Željko Jachimovic, and Ms. Zoya Lalovic-Bojanic. Also, my own staff who've worked very hard for many months now to put what we hope will be a world-class conference together. I'd also like to thank the Atlas Foundation for supporting us to have Paul Tough speak to us here in Montenegro, and the British Ambassador, Ambassador Whiting, for supporting James Arthur, who will be coming and speaking to us on Thursday. I'd also like to thank the wonderful young people from the Podgorica School Parliament, from the US Alumni Association, and from Spark ME, and all of the international experts who traveled far and wide to give us their time here in Montenegro. Finally, also the social entrepreneurs, the national education experts, and the disruptive innovators that will be joining us on panels during the week. We sincerely hope, from the bottom of our hearts, that you enjoy this conference, but we also hope that you take back these ideas and the enthusiasm from this conference and feed it into your schools to giving children the best possible future and the best possible outcomes, to create a generation who are able to ensure social cohesion, economic competitiveness, and democratic development in the 21st century. Hvala vam.